Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live for nearly a millennium? Enough time to decipher every mystery of nature, to accumulate unimaginable knowledge, and to witness entire centuries of history unfold before your very eyes. This isn't fantasy or science fiction. It was the reality of the first humans, beings created directly by God. Adam lived 930 years. Methuselah reached an astonishing 969. An entire civilization thrived under a longevity that now seems absurd, almost unbelievable. But something changed. A profound turning point in human history appears in Genesis 6:3, where we find one of the Bible's most mysterious and unsettling declarations. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. Why did God make such a radical decision? What happened that led the creator of the universe to, in a way, reprogram humanity? Today, we will explore the secrets of this divine choice, one that forever altered the destiny of the human race and our understanding of the purpose of life. When we think of Adam, we often imagine a primitive man, perhaps naive, discovering the world for the first time. But the biblical truth shows something entirely different. He was formed directly by the hands of God, with a perfect mind and intellectual capacities that would eclipse any genius who has ever lived. Adam wasn't a caveman. He was the first scientist, the pioneer of wisdom that transcends generations. During his 930 years, he had more than enough time to study, categorize, and understand creation in ways our brief lifespans could never achieve. The Bible says God brought all the animals to Adam so that he could name them, but in the Hebrew context, to name was not merely to label. It meant to perceive the essence, to understand the nature and fundamental characteristics of each creature. Adam was, in essence, conducting the first genetic study in history, discovering patterns, classifying species, and decoding the intricate web of life designed by God. Every animal, every plant, every natural phenomenon became an open book to his extraordinary mind. Adam's knowledge deepened even further with the first recorded genetic procedure, the creation of Eve from his rib. When he awoke, he immediately recognized, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." More than a romantic statement, that moment was a living lesson in genetics, biological compatibility, and the miracle of human creation, something no modern scientist could ever witness firsthand. For centuries, Adam passed this knowledge on to his descendants. He lived to see 8 generations unfold, sharing with his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren a vast reservoir of wisdom about longevity, natural laws, and the divine principles that governed life. Every conversation with him was like opening the secret manual of creation. This knowledge multiplied, forming a scientific and technological foundation unimaginable for any age. When Adam died at 930 years old, it wasn't just a life ending, it was the loss of a living library. Yet the seeds of wisdom he planted continued to grow, spreading through the minds of his descendants and shaping a civilization capable of exploring frontiers that even God had set. And yet, if Adam possessed such immense wisdom, what happened to the generations that followed? How did that knowledge evolve to the point of drawing the Creator's attention once again? Imagine a world where youth began at 200 years old and the elderly lived past 1,000. Each human being was a walking library, carrying centuries of observations, discoveries, and accumulated experience. This was the reality of the antediluvian world, a super-civilization that flourished between Adam and Noah, driven by a longevity that defies modern understanding. It was not a primitive society, but a golden age of science, knowledge, and technology, perhaps greater than anything we know today. Consider these astonishing numbers. Adam lived 930 years, Seth 912, Enosh 905, Kenan 910, Mahalalel 895, Jared 962, Enoch 365 before being taken by God, Methuselah 969, Lamech 777, and Noah 950. For hundreds of years, these living universities coexisted simultaneously. Imagine the conversations, the debates, the exchange of ideas among minds that carried centuries of wisdom and observation. Each patriarch functioned like a biological supercomputer, capable of processing and storing information at a level far beyond human comprehension. Knowledge did not merely accumulate, it multiplied. Adam passed on his discoveries to Seth, who expanded and shared them with Enosh, who in turn refined and developed them further for Kenan. Each generation built new foundations upon the previous one, but with enough time not only to learn, but to innovate, experiment, and discover. In just a few centuries, this civilization could have developed technologies and understood scientific principles that humanity would take millennia to rediscover. The Bible gives us hints about the level of their advancement. Genesis 4 describes the descendants of Cain as builders of cities, creators of musical instruments, and craftsmen in bronze and iron. But that's only the surface. With centuries to perfect their skills, these antediluvian artisans and scientists likely developed techniques that would astonish even modern engineers. Building cities was not simply stacking stones, it involved urban planning, hydraulic engineering, advanced architecture, and a complex social organization. Yet, a growing danger lurked within this super-civilization. The same knowledge that could serve for good could also be corrupted. The longevity that allowed wisdom to flourish also gave time for evil, depravity, and rebellion to take root against God. Corrupt individuals had centuries to refine wicked practices, influence generations, and spread destruction. What should have been a blessing became a very real threat to the divine plan. Among all these patriarchs, one stood out not only because of his age, but because of the prophetic meaning of his existence, a man whose very name carried a message about the destiny of humanity. Among all the antediluvians, none is as fascinating as Methuselah, who lived 969 years, the longest lifespan in human history. But Methuselah was more than a record of longevity. He was a divine marker, a prophetic timepiece set by God to announce the countdown to the most devastating judgment the earth would ever experience. His name in Hebrew holds a meaning few understand. He was a living prophecy, walking the earth for nearly 1,000 years. And when Methuselah finally died, the world would feel the approach of something that could no longer be ignored. Methuselah's father was Enoch, the man who walked with God and was taken away without tasting death. When Enoch gave that name to his son, he wasn't merely choosing words. He was transmitting a divine revelation about the fate of humanity. God had shown him that judgment would come, but not immediately. There would be a period of grace, a time of divine patience, and that time would be measured by the life of Methuselah. Every year Methuselah lived was another year of mercy, another chance for humanity to turn back to God. It was as if the Creator himself had set a 969-year countdown, a final opportunity for repentance and transformation. For nearly a millennium, Methuselah stood as a living warning. Everyone around him knew the meaning of his name and understood its silent message: the judgment is coming. Imagine the spiritual and emotional weight of living alongside someone whose very name declared, "When he dies, judgment will come." Every sunrise was a reminder of God's patience. Every completed year, another chance for humanity to change its course. But that chance was wasted. Instead of repenting, the antediluvian civilization plunged ever deeper into corruption and violence. Genesis 6:5 paints the dark picture. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil. Continually God's patience was not infinite, and its limit was directly tied to Methuselah's lifespan. When the countdown finally reached its end, judgment became inevitable and absolute. And then it happened. In the year 1656 after creation, Methuselah died at 969 years old, and in that very same year, just as his name had prophesied nearly a millennium earlier. The waters of the flood engulfed the earth. It was no coincidence. It was the precise fulfillment of a divine message that had echoed through generations. The death of Methuselah marked the end of the Age of Grace. The countdown had reached 0. Before departing, Methuselah fulfilled one final vital mission. He passed down all the knowledge accumulated over nearly 1,000 years to his grandson Noah, preparing him for the greatest task in human history. But why did God see it necessary not only to judge that generation, but also to genetically reprogram humanity itself? What threat was so immense that it required such a radical intervention? When God declared in Genesis 6:3 that man's days would be limited to 120 years, he wasn't merely setting a new lifespan limit, it was a divine hack in the code of life, a profound reprogramming of human potential. This was not a random or arbitrary decision. It was a cosmic containment measure, designed to prevent humanity from amassing power and knowledge to the point of rivaling the Creator. What had begun as a blessing, extraordinary longevity, and limitless understanding, was becoming a force too dangerous to be left unchecked, and that was precisely what God needed to contain. Extreme longevity had proven to be a double-edged sword. It allowed wisdom to flourish, but it also gave enough time for evil to take root and mature within a single human heart. Imagine the danger. A modern tyrant can wreak havoc in just a few decades, but an antediluvian tyrant had centuries to perfect the arts of oppression, manipulation, and control. Evil did not merely grow, it refined itself, becoming more sophisticated, more insidious, spreading like a silent virus through generations. Corrupt leaders could establish dynasties of darkness lasting centuries, consolidating influence and corrupting entire societies. The longevity that should have been a blessing had turned into a curse, allowing corruption to sink its roots deep into the fabric of human civilization. And it wasn't just wickedness, it was defiance of divine authority. The antediluvian civilization had reached a level of technological and scientific advancement that threatened the cosmic balance itself. With centuries to explore and experiment, they could have developed mechanisms capable of interfering with the very laws of nature set by God. Knowledge without wisdom, science without reverence, technology without morality. An entire society began to see itself as equal to, or even greater than, the Creator. It was a repetition of Adam and Eve's original sin, multiplied 1,000-fold. That's why the 120-year limit was not merely a disciplinary act, it was a preventive intervention. By drastically shortening human lifespans, God prevented evil individuals from having centuries to spread corruption and restricted the accumulation of dangerous knowledge. It was as if he had installed a divine antivirus into the system of humanity. Each new generation would now start almost from scratch, with less time to develop technologies or ideologies that could challenge the established order. However, this genetic reprogramming was not instantaneous. It unfolded gradually and precisely across several generations after the flood. Noah lived 950 years, but his descendants experienced a steady and measurable decline in lifespan. God was carefully calibrating the new human software, finding the perfect balance. Enough time for growth and learning, but not enough for unchecked corruption. This change served as a constant reminder that longevity was a gift, not a natural right. But how exactly did this genetic reset work? And what impact did this divine reprogramming have on the generations that followed? The flood was not merely a judgment. It was the greatest genetic reset in human history. When the waters finally receded and Noah stepped onto dry land, he carried more than just his family. He bore the reprogrammed DNA of a new humanity. God had implemented what we might call a divine algorithm, gradually reducing human lifespan in a controlled, purposeful manner, preparing the world for a new beginning. Noah lived an astonishing 950 years, but with each new generation, human life seemed to be calibrated gradually and intentionally, as if God were carefully adjusting the parameters of existence for the new era that was beginning. his sons and grandsons experienced a progressive decline in longevity, following an almost mathematical rhythm, as though a divine algorithm was determining the lifespan of every soul. Noah, 950 years. Shem, 600 years. Arphaxad, 438 years. Shelah, 433 years. Eber, 464 years. Peleg, 239 years. Reu, 239 years. Serug, 230 years. Nahor, 148 years. Terah, 205 years. Abraham, 175 years. This was not coincidence. There was a pattern, a calculated reduction that reflected the hand of God genetically shaping humanity for a new reality. Each generation lived shorter than the one before, as though a divine clock was being finely tuned, marking the exact pace for history to unfold according to plan. This redefinition of human life was not merely symbolic, it carried deep strategic purposes. It allowed the plan of redemption to progress more rapidly, accelerating the fulfillment of the messianic promises. It also served as a purifying mechanism. Shorter lifespans limited the spread of the genetic and spiritual corruption inherited from the pre-flood world, granting every generation a new opportunity for renewal. It was as if God had rebooted the human system, installing a safer and more balanced version of humanity. Furthermore, this adjustment in lifespan redefined the balance of social and familial power. Before the flood, a single patriarch could influence countless generations directly, but with shorter lives, the ability to maintain absolute control over descendants diminished. This prevented tyrants or corrupt leaders from establishing millennia-long dynasties of oppression. And perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of this reprogramming was how it prepared the way for the coming of the Messiah. The planned reduction of human longevity created a precise timeline, synchronizing each generation with the prophecies concerning Christ, almost as if the very clock of humanity were being adjusted so that every piece of the divine plan would fit perfectly. The accelerated rhythm of generations made it possible for the promises given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to be fulfilled at the appointed time, forming a sequence that would culminate in the incarnation of the Son of God. But this divine engineering runs even deeper. There exists a hidden pattern, a mathematical code woven into the genealogy of the Messiah. The list of names in Matthew 1 is not just a sequence of ancestors. Each name, each connection between father and son, appears to follow a supernatural logic, revealing the precision and invisible design of God guiding every generation, silently preparing the world for the exact moment salvation would appear. When Matthew structured the genealogy of Christ into 3 sets of 14 generations, from Abraham to David, from David to the Babylonian exile, and from the exile to Jesus, he was not merely creating a mnemonic device. Behind this organization lies a carefully designed numerical pattern that points directly to the messianic identity of Jesus. The number 14 was not chosen at random. In Hebrew, the name David carries the numerical value of 14, linking the entire genealogy to Israel's most emblematic king. Thus, every generation is not only historical, but also charged with symbolic and divine meaning. But the code goes even further than simple numerology. The 3 sets of 14 generations, totaling 42, represent the divine completeness orchestrated by God. The number 3, symbol of divine perfection, multiplied by the Davidic kingship, producing 42, a number that also echoes through apocalyptic prophecy as a marker of divinely appointed time. Each of those generations endured wars, plagues, exiles, and natural disasters, yet the messianic bloodline survived. Statistically, the survival of a single family line over 2,000 years, preserving accurate ancestral records, would be impossible without supernatural intervention. Even more intriguing are the deliberate omissions Matthew made. 4 kings of Judah, Ahaziah, Joash, Amaziah, and Jehoiakim, were intentionally excluded. Not by error or negligence, but by divine design, since their bloodlines were marked by curses tied to the house of Ahab and the marriage of Athaliah, daughter of Jezebel. In this way, God ensured the purity of the messianic line, removing elements that could have contaminated the Davidic lineage. It was a kind of divine genetic editing, demonstrating God's sovereign control over inheritance and the transmission of traits through generations. The preservation of this lineage during historical catastrophes, such as the Babylonian exile, is yet another testimony of divine planning. While most Israelite families lost their records and tribal identities, the line of David, which would lead to Joseph and Mary, kept its genealogies intact through 7 decades of captivity. This was not merely human discipline. It was as if God had stored a heavenly backup of the most crucial records in history. And the most astonishing aspect of this code is its connection to the 120-year lifespan limit God set for humankind. By reducing longevity in a controlled manner, He created the perfect rhythm for the 42 generations to unfold precisely, fulfilling prophecy at the appointed time. If the patriarchs had lived 900 years, there would have been too few generations. If only 30 or 40, too many. But by calibrating life between 70 and 120 years, God fine-tuned humanity's genetic timer, preparing every step leading to the incarnation of Christ. This timeline is not just a historical curiosity. It reveals that every divine decision made thousands of years ago still reverberates in our lives today, showing that God's plan is as meticulous as it is endless. The limitation of human life was not an arbitrary punishment. It was a cosmic strategy, a carefully designed measure to protect humanity from itself and accelerate the fulfillment of the redemption plan. From Adam, the first explorer of the cosmos created by God, to the antediluvian civilization that accumulated dangerous and powerful knowledge. From Methuselah, the guardian of a prophetic timer that lasted 969 years, to the post-flood genetic reset that recalibrated humanity. Every step of history was carefully orchestrated, preparing the stage for the coming of the Messiah. The genealogical code of Jesus shows that his life was not a cosmic accident, but part of a meticulous plan unfolding for millennia, with every generation, every birth, every choice aligning with the destiny of salvation. Today, living under the 120-year limit established by God, you have a precious and finite window of time to fulfill your eternal purpose. Each day is a divine gift. Each year, a unique opportunity to align your life with the plan God carefully designed for you. The same wisdom that reduced our lifespan to protect humanity also gave us enough time to know our Creator, accept salvation in Christ, and leave a legacy that impacts future generations. Your life, though shorter than that of the antediluvian patriarchs, is exactly the right length to fulfill the eternal purpose God planned before the foundation of the world. The 120-year limit is not a punishment, but an instrument of grace, perfectly calibrated so that you may know the Creator, accept salvation, and fulfill your destiny. Every sunrise is a divine gift. Every year, a precious chance to walk in alignment with God's eternal plan for your existence. The same hand that protected humanity through the genetic reset also determined the exact moment of your birth. In this generation, in this age, with this unique opportunity to experience salvation. If this revelation touched your heart, if it opened your eyes to the magnitude of God's love and design, show it by clicking like on this video. By doing so, this message will reach more people who need to hear it. May God bless you, and I'll see you soon.